Hey there everyone, Noir here and welcome to another Petscop Fan Theories episode. Now before we begin, if you're new to this series I would highly suggest pausing this video and watching episode 1's analysis first, because there were a few things that I mentioned that would be coming up in future installments. Some of those will be in this episode. I'll give you a couple of seconds here to pause it so that you're all set to carry on after you're caught up. Okay, so, as you can probably tell by the name of this episode, we are up to Petscop 2, and this is where things really begin to take a turn to the macabre side of the game. We start the episode in the new Maker plane with a locked basement door and Paul away from the controller. This is not the only time that a basement is referenced. In fact, Paul mentions Raina being in a basement with other kids playing games in Petscop 11. Considering the significance of Raina and Petscop's connection to Paul, and his memory of meeting Raina in said basement, I can only assume that the door opening is actually symbolising Paul's descent into their past. We're now greeted with our first obscure loading screen, which I will explain what it's referencing when it comes up later on in this episode. Once he enters the lower area, we see a room that makes me think that we are in the game's version of Raina's basement. This is due to seeing what looks to be a boiler in the top right hand corner of the room, and boilers are usually situated in the basement when it comes to suburban homes. In this room there are some pictures of clocks on the wall, which is also something that Petscop's story focuses heavily on. Time. Now Paul moves on and hears a telephone ringing in a nearby room, which he answers and sees the following sentence appear on the screen: "Care left the room." This, alongside the same message reappearing in Petscop 11, puts this phone call time-wise at the point where Care is kidnapped by Marvin. I noticed a lot of people saying that they thought that this room looked like an office, perhaps for a care worker or social services worker, whereas I see this room as an office for a police officer, due to the cork board that's being used to house the game's version of a reference photograph, which is the picture of Care A, Care B, and Care NLM. This is the moment that a member of the household is calling the police to tell them that their child is missing, but it's already been noted that Care goes missing a lot, which is shown to us via the letter for her, and Raina's writing on Care A's description in Petscop 11, which explains the already present picture reference, to be honest. Well, at least that's how I'm perceiving it anyway. We then reach what I believe to be the thought path of the events in question, but referenced as an actual road. The house, the school, and the windmill. This looks like somebody trying to connect the dots and find the missing girl to me. I also think that this is why we hear a droning noise when we see the picture of the school. It's the end game. I'll explain why I think that when it comes to it. And now we come to our first callback, the road. If you recall, in my episode 1 analysis I asked you if you thought that Ronith's room looked familiar. This is what I meant. It may not look like it, but I see this road as being incredibly significant to the story, and I'm almost positive that we will see it in Petscop 13, which I believe as well to be the final episode. In Petscop 11 we see a demo of a vehicle travelling down a road to reach the school, which I've already stated that I think that the school is the endgame for the missing girl. This road repeatedly shows a car speeding through it, as well as other links in another couple of episodes, which I'll point out when they show up. Next up is another loading screen that depicts a staircase with dark footprints on the right side of them, referencing the Shadow Monster Man in the message that Paul had alongside the game. Then we see a gravestone that says Michael Hammond, 1988 to 1995. Mike was a gift. To which Paul says the memorable line of, "That's a dead kid." The reason why he appears to be upset but not appalled is probably because he has no attachment to this child as far as he's aware of. But that doesn't mean that Mike isn't important to this story. In fact, I think we've already seen him, which I'll explain in another episode. We also meet Care NLM in the lower part of the shed. Yes, I said shed. It has a shovel and a rake in the top section, and it's situated in a garden. Now remember that I said a shovel and a rake, and it's a shed. That will be important later on. Now Care and LM can't be caught yet, so Paul moves on. Our next stop is Tool's room. Paul asks Tool, "What?" To which it replies with, "I don't know." Then when he looks at the image of the windmill as he tries to leave, it then tells him to keep looking at it. We hear 2 loud droning noises, then he finally leaves and enters our final area in this analysis, the Quitter's room. Now please take notes, the reason why I'm not, elaborating more on Tool in this episode is because we see him a lot more further down the line, so I think it would be more relevant to do it then. Now then, as we've seen in Petscop 12, the facade was taken away from the Quitter's room, which was the room's namesake, the New Maker case. It was this very suspicion that made me want to delve further into Petscop in the first place and start doing these theories, because I initially saw the game theorists' take on this story before I even watched a single episode, and the way that they portrayed their theory was that Petscop in its entirety was about adoption, rebirthing, and Candice Newmaker's death. But I realised as soon as I saw this episode that there was a lot more to Petscop than that. Essentially, I looked at it after having that idea of the theory in my head, and I thought, no, that'd be too easy. And it turns out that that was indeed the case. Now, remember earlier on in this episode when I said I would get back to that first loading screen? Here you go. It's the layout of the Quitter's room from a bird's eye view. We're also aware of the copycats' identities now, Tiara and Belle. I think that it's still 2 people though, because of the fact that Marvin and Raina both talk about them separately, but also in conjunction with one another, such as Marvin saying that Tiara plays bad music, but Raina mentions the septet on the needles for Belle specifically. This works hand in hand with the windmill story, which I'll go into when we get to it further down the line, and it's the reason why I believe that both Amber and Pen are pet versions of the pair of them respectively. And that brings episode 2's analysis to a close. In episode 3's analysis, we'll be delving into the child library, and the plot does indeed thicken a lot further, so make sure you come back for that one too. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments section, and as usual, even if you didn't enjoy it, comment away and let me know how I can improve it for you. Until next time people, keep on surviving.